Lust defined. Sex has become one of the most discussed subjects of modern times. The Victorians pretended it did not exist. The moderns pretend that nothing else exists. The topic of sex, for better or for worse, absolutely dominates many a conversation. Like its sister sin, gluttony, lust allows a soul unable to confront the reality of life with a brief escape. Indulge in lust, and all of life's troubles and worries disappear for a moment, only to reappear again unchanged, and with one soul in a state of peril. Lust offers a quick solution to the already numbed-out soul of modern man living in the post-Nietzschean era. Instead of facing the existential crisis of human existence in any small manner, instead of facing reality, hardship, suffering, fear, woe, or anything else, man can temporarily forget his emptiness in the intensity of a momentary experience. Lust is insidious too, not only attacking like a blitzkrieg with its temptations, but also worming its way underneath the skin, planting seeds of temptation everywhere, sometimes leading the soul down little steps towards it before finally administering a fatal wound. Lust is not fallen into because it is awful and hurts. It offers us something and we think we benefit from it. It offers us that high a drug gives, but only a momentary pleasure without any responsibility or worry. Indulging in it has a hollowing out effect on the soul. It sells the person out for all they are worth, simply in order to feel good for a little while. This is the desperation of our age, and the human condition, to feel good at any cost, and to deny oneself the pleasures of lust for a higher cause is looked upon as insanity. Lust has no bounds, and enters marriages, when sex is practiced with the intention of experiencing the physical orgasm only. This is using one person by another. Even if the use is mutual, it breeds resentment and eventual alienation. Even if the couple do not separate, lust blinds and enslaves us to the senses. It deadens our senses. The only good thing about the sin of lust, it cannot persist into eternity. In actuality, sins of the flesh tend to burn themselves out over time. After a while, lust becomes a habit, and what pleasure it brought diminishes until we wonder what the attraction is. Sensuality is the craving for physical pleasures of all kinds, an inordinate desire to avoid pain, for physical and even emotional comfort. The best food and wine, the best looking car, can all be forms of lust. Lust denies our spiritual nature and promotes the lie that this is all there is. We try to make a heaven on earth, but instead we create a hell. Other people become ways of satisfying our needs. They are merely objects to service us, bring us food, run our business, give us pleasure. We want to reduce the population of the world so we won't have to share, or we want more children so they can carry on the family business. Everyone else becomes a means to an end. What is love? The modern interpretation is focused on the feeling of love and the effect of the act, more so than the cause. Here are some definitions. An intense feeling of deep affection. Babies feel parents with intense feelings of love, deep affection, fondness, tenderness, warmth, intimacy, attachment, endearment, a person or thing that one loves. She was the love of his life, beloved, loved one, love of one's life, dear, dearest, darling, sweetheart, sweetie, angel, honey. Feel a deep romantic or sexual attachment to someone. Do you love me? Care very much for, feel deep affection for, hold very dear, adore, think the world of, be devoted to, idolize, worship. All of these interpretations of love are defined by feelings. It's about the good feeling you get. You know, man, love is about that good feeling, that pure blissful energy of undivided light, the Christ consciousness within. Love today is completely obsessed over feelings, like a heroin addict chasing after that first time high. It is all based on emotion and senses. Love only matters if the feeling is good. It doesn't matter if the actions are. If what you say or do offends me, even if it's the truth and for my benefit, it doesn't matter, because now you got me feeling bad, and so you can just take all that good intentioned bullshit and throw it out the window. This is the definition of lust, not love. All these actions are self-seeking. It is completely corrupt, because this is lust, just calling itself love. The true definition of love is what you do. It is a choice and action, using one's free will. It is completely independent of the senses. Love has nothing to do with a feeling you get, although more often than not, does cause good feelings to occur, but that is an effect of love, not the cause. Love is selfless and a pure gift. Love is also known as charity, the most perfect of all virtues. When we love God above all things for his own sake, and our neighbor as ourselves for the love of God, that is the purest, most noble form of love we can ever strive for, because it is a complete denial of self, ceasing to continue following one's own will, which is in constant rebellion against God, and giving God what rightfully belongs to him, and that is our submission to his will. Lust is a disordered desire for sexual pleasure, where sexual pleasure is sought for itself, isolated from its procreative and unitive purposes. The reason for sexual desire to be acted upon is solely for the purpose of procreating offspring and for the bearing, education and raising of children. Let me repeat that, the only reason for the sex act is for the purpose of procreation. The ends justify the means. If the sex act is done for any other reason, it is a disorder, not only in the desire, but the act itself, which twists the goodness of the sexual unions, selfless love, into the love of self, always in search for sensual gratification. When the attention of the soul's higher powers are strongly concentrated on the activity of a lower power, the soul's higher powers are evidently weakened and disordered in their activity. And when the whole attention of the soul is drawn to lower powers, that is the concupiscible and the sense of touch, in sexual lust because of the strong pleasure therein, the higher powers of reason and will necessarily suffer deficiency. Sexual pleasures unloosens the human spirit and set aside right reason. If sex is used naturally and the end purpose is reproduction, there is no sin. Lust darkens the mind and has a negative effect on how we perceive the value of human life. It sees others as instruments for sexual and carnal pleasure, without sincere regard for their well-being, as it dehumanizes and debases the quality of people to that of inanimate objects and abstractions, then endows the inanimate object with human qualities. People become ignored, neglected and objectified as the means to an end, while all the affections are placed on the object, as all the good that will result in the end. There is no virtue that can arise from practicing vice and continuing in habitual sin. The only way to build virtue is to practice the disciplines of virtue. In the case of combating the vice of lust, the desire for purity should be obtained, just as fasting is a practice that builds temperance to combat gluttony. Abstinence from any sexual activity is the practice that builds chastity, which combats lust. Just because the sexual act feels good, doesn't mean it is good. It is a sin, if it is in the act of violating God's will by transgressing his commandments. Sin is any thought or action that endangers the ideal relationship between you and God. To sin has been defined as to miss the mark. Eastern Orient traditions in some fields of alternative medicine recommend and teach deliberate retrograde ejaculation as a way of conserving the body's energy. One manner of achieving this is by applying pressure to the perineum during orgasm. It was believed that doing this caused the sperm to travel into the head and nourish the brain, or that energy is conserved physically by keeping the sperm, and thereby the intelligence that created it, in the body. Many Taoist practitioners link the loss of ejaculatory fluids to the loss of vital life force, where excessive fluid loss results in premature aging, disease, and general fatigue. Taoists believe that the Jing traveled up into the head and nourished the brain. In the concepts of Kundalini, coiled one refers to a form of primal energy or Shakti, said to be located at the base of the spine, and awakening the Kundalini for the purpose of reaching spiritual enlightenment and a range of supernormal power. The concept of Kundalini is sometimes described as a coiled female serpent goddess of subtle substance, residing near the base of the spine, and the aim of the yoga is to rouse this serpent, lift her head, and bring her up a subtle nerve or channel of the spine through the chakras to the thousand-petaled lotus at the crown of the head, waking the psychology and personality of the practitioner to be fundamentally transformed. In Western esotericism, the terms left-hand path and right-hand path refer to a dichotomy between two opposing approaches to magic. This terminology is used in various groups involved in the occult and ceremonial magic. Sex magic is any type of sexual activity used in magical, ritualistic or otherwise religious and spiritual pursuits. One practice of sex magic is using the energy of sexual arousal or orgasm with visualization of a desired result. A premise of sex magic, which is the concept that sexual energy is a potent force that can be harnessed to transcend one's normally perceived reality. My question to you regarding these sexual practices is not whether their results deliver, or does what it claims. I don't care really that there is no actual evidence, and I do not want to get into a debate about it. Just to take a look into what the real goal is here. What are the ends that justify the means? The whole sex magic concept is based on a belief that the universe and everything in it is because of the sex act, some divine masculine and feminine mysterious force of consciousness that always takes on the same type of form as an abstract inanimate object type identity, which they describe as one collective unknowable being, which is God, and he wants us to enter heaven and know him, the ultimate level of Christ consciousness, through ascension, spiritual evolution, and become one with the universe. This description of God may sound special and magical, but once you get past the distraction of wordplay and break down the abstract nonsense, you can clearly see where this worldview of theirs comes from. Since all they do is practice in sexual gratification, all they can do is identify their external world through sexual objectifying it, never conforming to the world, but conforming the world as the only way they can see it, to be just like them. A world driven by lust too. What a hypocritical, selfish, ignorant and evil way it is to be, seeing the sex act as a means to gain energy and power, using what is intended for procreation, as a vehicle for their agenda, their own pleasure, until they get what they need. The only rising up going on here is their grip on reality and the limits to which their imagination can take them. That is not an enlightened mind, but a dark one, the effect of which, like I stated earlier, is an effect of the vice lust. 8 daughters of lust. 1. Blindness of mind, cannot see what the flesh does not want to. Lack of consideration, I use you when you use me. 3. Inconstancy. 4. Temerity, foolishness. Head. 5. Self-love, I am worthy of love, not you. 6. Hatred of God, I will ascend above the Most High. 7. The love of this world, sex is the essence of the universe. 8. Despair for the next. Don't worry, self. I have convinced you of reincarnation and the absurdity of hell being real, or as long as I believe in Jesus Christ, I can be saved, even though I refuse to stop sinning. I don't want it, I just need it. Give me, I need. This is how the Christian, and all other spiritual hippies think, regarding salvation. The fall of Adam and Eve is what brought the wound of concupiscence to human nature, where the soul's passions are no longer ordered perfectly to the soul's intellect. Original sin stands as the fault and corruption of the nature of the offspring of Adam, whereby man is very far gone from original righteousness, and is of his own nature inclined to evil, so that the flesh lusteth always contrary to the spirit, and therefore in every person born into this world, deserves God's wrath and damnation. This infection of nature does remain in them, whereby the lust of the flesh is not subject to the law of God. Concupiscence and lust have of itself the nature of sin. Temperance is a virtue that moderates attraction and desire for pleasure and provides balance in the use of created goods, a disposition of the mind which binds the passions. Temperance combats the sin of gluttony, and is broken down into 4 main strengths: forgiveness, humility, prudence, and self-regulation. Chastity is placed opposite the deadly sin of lust, and is classified as one of 7 virtues. Now amongst all relationships the conjugal tie does, more than any other, engross men's hearts, so that our first parents said, Genesis chapter 2 verse 24, a man shall leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife. Hence, they who are aiming at perfection must, above all things, avoid the bond of marriage, which, in a pre-eminent degree, entangles men in earthly concerns. This is the reason which St. Paul gives for his counsel concerning continence. He that is without a wife is solicitous for the things that belong to the Lord, how he may please God. But he that is with a wife is solicitous for the things of the world, how he may please his wife. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 32. What the apostle, St. Paul practiced indeed, he taught in word, in his epistle to the Romans, 13:14, after his warning against chambering and impurities, he concludes, make no provision for the flesh in its concupiscences. He rightly lays stress upon the concupiscences of the flesh, and its desire for pleasure, for it is incumbent on us to make provision for what is necessary for our body, and says, Ephesians 5:29, no man ever hated his own flesh, but he nourishes and cherisheth it. On this account St. Paul warns us in 1 Corinthians 6:18, flee from fornication. It is permissible to await a conflict with other vices, but this one must be shunned, for in no other means can it be overcome.